Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unshackled for Life. We're unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. We'll be talking about all things personal finance. And I'm your host, John Green. Let's go ahead, let's get into it. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the topic of credit consumerism. I'll explain what it is, how it affects our personal finances, and most importantly, I'll give you some tips on how to break free from it. So stay locked in and let's get into the episode. So let's get started with the definition. Credit consumerism is the practice of relying heavily on credit to purchase goods and services. And this often leads to a cycle of debt and financial stress. So let me give you an example. Imagine that you get a credit card and it has some sort of wonderful short-term offer on it, and it also has a high limit and a low introductory rate. So you start using it for your everyday purchases, maybe some vacations, and maybe even some emergencies. And over time, that balance continues to grow, the interest rate increases, and it just becomes this vicious cycle of debt that continues to hold you back. And when you think about the name of this show, Unshackled, what we're talking about is that feeling of being shackled to debt. And what I really want to do is inspire you to leave that lifestyle behind. So, one of the outcomes, just something to kind of think about. Imagine what your life could be if all of the credit cards were gone and you had an emergency fund that, I don't know, let's say it has more money than all of your credit card balances or your credit card limits combined. Wouldn't that be a better life? Wouldn't that be a better choice? So hopefully you'll get there because that's where I want you to get. It's a great place. All right, so let's now jump in. Let's talk about the impact of it. So when we think about the impact of buying things with credit, we already know those interest rates are crazy. I mean, when you start talking now, I think the average interest rate is around 25%. That's nuts. 25%. I mean, back when I was, in my early 20s, starting off with, making bad financial decisions, I think the interest rates back then, I think one of my cards, I remember having a card that had a $30,000 limit, and I think the interest rate was 9%. So when you think about it now, like, man, had it been 25%, oh my God, I would never, never have gotten out of credit debt. Like, that would have been insane. My goodness. But anyway, all right, let's get back. So, when we talk about this high interest debt, it's that's the purpose of it. That's what the credit card companies want, right? They want you in debt. They want you to be locked into debt and locked into having to pay them all of this interest. And depending on what you're buying, if you're buying stuff like dinner or, small things, if you're buying gas, stuff that you consume and once it's gone, it's gone, it's done, it's over with, man, you start to feel like shit when it comes to thinking about where all that debt came from. And look, and I'm talking to you because I've done it. It's been me. I remember, I remember putting the last $30 of a credit card on some gas, and and I just remember just feeling like, man, I'm gonna be paying this interest on some gas. Man, what? Like that sucks. Anyway, all right. So let's kind of move into the next part, which is the emotional impact of it. I've felt that stress of the credit card debt, and and being locked into credit consumerism where really I didn't have any liquid money, so I'm using the credit card to kind of keep me afloat, keep me going. And you know, it can get pretty stressful. And especially, depending on how many credit cards you're shuffling and trying to juggle. I mean, it can be pretty overwhelming. And that level of anxiety, that stress, the burden that comes with it, and that stuff starts to wear on your health. And that's not an unshackled feeling, young people or old people, whatever age you might be. That's not a good feeling. And I really want us to break free from that. I want you to break free from that. And you know, this kind of there's so many stories I could give, but just understand that that emotion, that stress, that's probably why you're watching this episode right now, wondering what little tidbit of information I can give you. So let me give you some good tidbits of information. Let me give you some ways to how to break free from it. So the first thing, in my opinion, the first thing you need to do is to know how much debt you really have. So assess the limits. Assess the amount of debt that you're in. I recommend just sitting down, just listing it all out. If you're a computer person, you want to type it on a spreadsheet, do that. If you're like me, where you rather write it on paper, list it out on paper. But take an account of, you know, what what creditors you have, how much you owe them, what you're paying them each month, and just list it all out. Then, once you have it all listed, you can, take stock. You can examine it. You can start to make some decisions. Start decide on who you want to pay off first. Who would, what would be the easiest thing to pay off first? What would free up the most money at the end of the month? There's different ways to do it. Some people recommend doing the snowball method. The snowball method is when you start off with your smallest debt and you pay that one off first. Once you have that smallest debt paid off, hey, now you got some extra money at the end of the month. You're going to take that extra money, you're going to roll it into the next smallest debt, and then you'll pay that one off. And then it goes on and on and on. To me, that's what I did. And to me, in my opinion, that's what helped. The reason that helped me, it was the quick satisfaction of knowing, hey, I just knocked off this card. Wow, I really just freed up $75 a month. Now I can put that $75 onto this one. And, and once I paid off that next card, I was then able to say, okay, now I can take this, $110, and now I can put that $110 onto this one. And it's a snowball effect. That's why it's called the snowball, because it gets larger and larger and larger, like when you think of a snowball rolling down a hill. Now, I live in Houston, Texas, and I'm originally from LA, and I can tell you I don't play with snow. So I really don't understand how that happens, but I'm sure it makes perfect sense. All right. Now, another thing, another way you could do it, some people talk about the avalanche method. The avalanche method is better from a financial standpoint, because what you're doing is you're going to look at your debts that have the highest interest rate. So you attack those first, and that the benefit of that is you're going to pay a little less in interest fees at the end of in interest at the end of the time it takes you to pay it off. So those are two good ways to kind of pay off debt. To me, like I said, I prefer the debt snowball. It worked for me. That's what kind of kept me motivated through that journey, because it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to happen overnight unless you just get some miraculous windfall of money. It's going to take some time. All right. It took me a couple of years to get out of all of my debt. And you may find that it takes you either shorter or longer. It just depends on how much debt you have and how much money you have to attack that debt. All right. But try to get out of debt. Once you're out of it, you'll notice that unshackled feeling that I'm talking about, it starts to come to fruition. And once you start to feel that freedom, you start to feel like, hey, this is my money and I have control of my money. It's not going to Visa, it's not going to MasterCard. This is my dough. Stuff starts to happen in your life, and things start to move a little bit better. All right. You start to feel a little different. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about, now that we kind of talked about how to get out of debt, um, let's talk about some things such as sorry, one moment, just checking in on something. Other strategies kind of help you manage the debt. So definitely want to make a budget. So once you want to make a budget, you want to start thinking of how you're going to save money so that you're not paying off a credit card and then saying, "Hey, let me use this credit card now that it has some room on it. Let me go take this girl out on a date with." That's not going to help you. All right, you're not helping your situation when you do stuff like that. Again, been there, done it. When I was single, that's some of the stuff I did. That's how I try to stay afloat. Not a good place to be at the end of the day, right? So, you know, make a budget for yourself. Give yourself some fun money, some money to play with and money to enjoy. Don't make, don't I'm not trying to tell you to not live your life, but just try to minimize some of what you can and try to make some better financial decisions with what money you have. All right. Now, here's the beautiful thing about once your debt is paid off. Once you've paid off your debt, that's not the end of your financial journey. All right. Because what you'll find is that it's very easy to fall back into more debt if you don't change your mindset. So, one thing that I recommend doing is creating an emergency fund. And with your emergency fund, people argue over how much it should be. Some people will say, "Hey, it should be 3 to 6 months." Some say, "Hey, maybe of your 3 to 6 months of your bills and expenses each month." Some people say it should be a year. It all depends on what you feel comfortable with. Um, to me, I think having 3 to 6 months is enough. But I have a very stable job where I don't expect to lose it. But even if I did lose it, since I'm a teacher, I feel like I could probably turn right around and find another teaching gig if I had to. All right, but you may not be in that situation. So if you have a specialized field or where there's not a high demand, then you may not have that opportunity to you may need to save a little bit more in case you do lose your job. But here's what I want you to think about. I mentioned this earlier. So one thing I noticed in my journey when I built when my wife and I, because I didn't do this by myself, but when my wife and I built up our emergency fund, you know, the first thing I noticed, emergencies were less likely to happen. So by having an emergency fund, the amount of emergencies started to dwindle because things like, if a car tire needed to be replaced, that wasn't the end of the world. It was like, okay, all right, let's just, we got the money. Go ahead and get it done, getting the oil changes and all the other stuff with my vehicle just to kind of keep it in good condition. It becomes a little easier. You start to understand why people always say, if you do it up front, you don't have to worry about it in the end. And that's kind of what you start to realize once you start to have a little bit more money. So anyway, sorry. So going back to the emergency fund, not only did the emergencies stop happening, but the quality of life changed immensely when that happened. Um, Not having all of the debt, not having all of the credit card bills coming in the mail, when all those things started to fall off, and life got a lot better. All right, and I know a lot of people talk about how great it is to have the FICO score and everything, and all of that will go up once you start paying off your debt. All that stuff goes up. Now, you just got to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of trying to get out more credit and get it, put yourself in situations where you're going to fall back in debt. The whole purpose of this is to break free from the debt. So once you have broken free, you'll notice those changes in life where you're just like, wow, things are pretty cool right now. And I experienced that quite a bit, and I hope you get to experience those things as well. If you have paid off, if you are one of those who are out of debt, please leave a comment down below, kind of sharing with people, I'm trying to help inspire people. It's a much greater feeling, y'all. Like, life is different. Um, Other things that you can do to kind of help yourself, try to try to go cash first. Try a cash first approach to spending money. Instead of reaching for the card, if you can use cash. Um, or your debit card. Like, even though you have the credit cards, don't use them. Don't carry them with you. Don't, if you feel like you need to use one, then, you need to use one in case of an emergency. If that makes you feel more secure, then okay, keep one in your wallet. That's fine. Um, I wanted to kind of explain, what my wife and I do. So once we paid off our credit cards, we pretty much cut them up, threw them out, got rid of them, closed the accounts. We kept one, and that one we use it for, it has some perks on it for like hotels and travel and stuff. So we use that. We use that one. We build up our points on that one, and we always, we make sure that we pay it off every month. It's all within our budget. We're not out there going crazy with it just because there's money on the card. We know what the limit is, and we're not trying to touch that limit. We're just using it for everyday expenses that we know we can quickly pay off at the end of the month. Um, I want to share. I want to take another second here, just kind of share some of my life stories with credit and credit cards. I mean, I've done things such as, there was one time in my early life where I had a job, and the job later, I was a salesperson, and the company decided to lay off the whole entire national sales team. And this job was kind of cool. We had company cars, we had, company expense accounts, stuff like that. It was nice little job straight out of college. But what happened when they laid us all off, I was left without a car. And, little more, I'll explain that. You can learn more about that story in my upcoming book, Unshackled for Life. But, but that car, when I lost that car, I was left with a choice. Like, I needed to get a new car. Like, actually, there was no choice. I needed to get a new car. So at the time, I had a car. I had this wonderful car that had a $30,000 limit on it. Like I said earlier, had like a 9% interest rate. So I said, huh, well, I need a car. So let me go out and buy a car. So I went out and I bought a car. It wasn't a $30,000 car. It wasn't anything close to that. Matter of fact, it was a little cash car. I think it was like close to 6,500 or something like that. But I bought this car on this card, and I'll be damned. I paid for that car for years because I kept that card around, way longer than I kept the car. The car was a piece of junk, and I got rid of it in probably less than a year. But I was paying that credit card for years. Another example would be, when I did start getting myself out of debt. As I started to get out of debt and get myself in a better situation, I had paid off one card, and then I get this offer in the mail for another card. This card promises all these rewards. And I'm like, ooh, I've never had a reward type card before. Huh. Yeah, let me go ahead and get it. So sure enough, I opened up that account and got that account, and and I started buying everything on it. Best thing I bought on that card was the wedding ring for my wife. That was the best thing I bought. But but it was just funny how the fact that I just paid off another card that had a lower limit, but then all of a sudden this other card comes in with a higher limit. And sure enough, I fell right into that trap. You know, one thing about this unshackled mindset, you start to realize just how devious and, and cunning these credit card companies are. And you start to realize that, it's a game to them, and you have to make it a game. You have to realize that you're in the game. So once I met my wife, that's kind of when I really started becoming financially literate, and I was able to quickly see, yeah, I fell into that trap. They got me on that one. So they got me. But you know what? Once I got rid of them, that was one of the first cards I cut up. I was so happy to get rid of them. And once they were done, at that point, it was on and cracking. I understood what was going on, and I understood the game, and I was able to recognize it. So from there on out, that was over for all those big Visa, Mastercard, Discover companies. Hate them all. I hate them all. So anyway, I feel like I've taken up enough of your time. I'm going to go ahead and recap a couple of things with you. So today we've talked about credit consumerism. You know, don't fall into this trap of of being in credit debt. These credit cards, they're not your friends. They're not there, they're not an emergency fund. They are not there to help you. So once you recognize that, you can start to take the steps to break free from those cards. Okay? And when it comes to breaking free from those cards, remember what you want to do is you want to list out all of those debts, take an account, list them by, who you owe money to, how much are you, what's the total balance and what's the monthly balance. From there, you can either do the debt snowball method, or you can do the avalanche method, which is based on interest rate. Whereas the debt snowball method is based on the smallest balance. So pick one of those, start attacking that debt. Create yourself a budget, and once you have a budget and you're starting to take control of that money, you know, when that credit card debt is over, build yourself an emergency fund. And that emergency fund, oh, it's going to be a beautiful thing. It's going to be a wonderful thing. And once you have that emergency fund, you will see so many things that used to stress you out, or that might stress you out right now. Those things become a lot less stressful. And it's just, that's that freedom. That's that unshackled feeling that I want you to experience. All right. So make sure that you're taking account of all that credit and knock it out. Get rid of it. It's not your friend. All right. So, another thing, lastly, most importantly, I want to remind you, this is a financial journey. Your life is a financial journey. Breaking free from credit consumerism is not going to happen overnight. All right. But it's entirely possible with some dedication and just implementing the right strategies. Take the first step today by reclaiming your financial future. All right. So, if you found today's episode helpful, please, guys, please like and subscribe. Um, Leave a comment in the section below. Share it with your friends and family who might also be able to benefit from this. And as always, feel free to reach out with any questions, and also your success stories. Feel free to leave those down in the comments as well. All right. Don't forget, Unshackled for Life. You can find us here on YouTube. You can also just listen to us on all the different podcasts, all the podcast platforms. You can also check into, if you want to keep up with us on our social media, you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on X, even though I'll probably drop that one. Facebook, and yeah, that's it. All right. So thanks for tuning in to Unshackled for Life. I'm John Green. I'll see you next time. You guys take care. Be blessed.